Peace serves as the cornerstone for social and economic development. In its absence, communities struggle with conflict and instability, which impede progress and lead to the misallocation of resources. There can't be peace without justice, and there cannot be justice without access. This is the issue at hand today on Hude Hour on Hude Network, where we discuss the happenings within the humanitarian and development space. I am Amadine Ubewe.
And I am Joan Eze. You're welcome to the program. The Sustainable Development Goal 16 emphasizes the important link between peace, justice, and human rights. It advocates for societies that uphold individual rights, including privacy, freedom of expression, and access to information.
Today, we'll turn a light on the targets under SDG 16, which entails advocating for the rule of law both nationally and internationally, and ensuring that everyone has equal access to justice. We'll also take a look at stories from across the globe on the state of things as regards these targets. But first, a look at our headlines. The UN says Nigeria lags behind on SDG 16. Supreme Court boosts free legal aid for prisoners in India. Australia's needs unmet by legal service funding. Review finds. We'll expand on the matter after this break. Now, access to justice and the creation of a safe, secure society are key components of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, particularly in Goals 5, 10, 16, and 17. Target 16.3 emphasizes the need for peaceful, inclusive societies and effective, accountable institutions that provide justice for all. In 2022, approximately one-third of the global prison population, about 3.5 million individuals, were held untried in pretrial detention or awaiting a final instance decision. The figure has remained stable since 2015, accounting for around 30% of all prisoners.
Indeed, the Kyoto Declaration on Advancing Crime Prevention, Criminal Justice, and the Rule of Law, along with recent resolutions such as General Assembly Resolution 78/227 on equal access to justice for all point to the significance of defending human rights. Globally, 1 in 6 individuals experiences discrimination, with racial discrimination being the most widespread. Furthermore, people with disabilities encounter discrimination nearly twice as often those without disabilities.
The numbers don't look good, but we'll explore them further after the break. The United Nations has reported that Nigeria is falling behind in achieving Sustainable Development Goal 16, which emphasizes peace, justice, and strong institutions. During the dissemination of a baseline study report by Search for Common Ground SFCG, UN Peace and Development Advisor Kim Araris Toogood stressed the need for targeted peace-building interventions, particularly in conflict-prone Niger Delta region. Toogood pointed out the complexities of the ongoing conflicts in Nigeria, stating that the country is behind in achieving Agenda 2030, specifically SDG 16 on peace and security. She urged that a more focused approach is necessary to address the root cause of these conflicts. The European Union's program manager, Letizia Torretta, reinforced the importance of collaborative initiatives aimed at transforming violence in the Niger Delta, committing to support community-centered approaches. Fatima Madaki, country director of Search for Common Ground, highlighted a significant project aimed at fostering peace across 66 communities in Rivers, Bayelsa, and Delta states. She noted that the baseline studies identify, links between poor governance, political marginalization, and environmental degradation, which exacerbates social tensions and criminal activity. Well, the UN is putting a call out to Nigeria there to do its best. And I think the main thing of note there is highlighting that some of the problems are caused by not having good governance or strong institutions. And that's what the SDG 16 is all about: peace, justice, and strong institutions. And again, the link between them.
Yeah, and this states, the communities in 66 communities
Yeah.
in Rivers, Bayelsa, and Delta State is really, really alarming with what is going on right there. So the UN has thought it very important to call on Nigeria as a country to look inward and to make sure that they are not lagging behind in achieving the agenda of the 2030 SDG 16. All right, let's move quickly to the next news item we have. The Supreme Court has issued new directives to enhance free legal aid services for prisoners. The justice emphasized that legal aid to the poor should not be poor legal aid, highlighting the importance of equal access to justice for those behind bars. The court urged all high courts to inform prisoners about their legal aid rights at the time of conviction or denial of bail. They also called for a new cover sheet to be included in judgment, providing information on how to access legal services. Well, the National Legal Service Authority, or NALSA, received praise for its efforts in improving legal services, having established legal aid clinics in over 1,256 jails and assisting more than 324,000 inmates since 2023. However, the court noted significant gaps, particularly regarding the number of prisoners identified for release versus those actually released. To tackle these issues, the court directed that legal aid outreach be improved, especially in rural areas, using creative methods like street plays and localized information sharing. Ongoing interaction between lawyers and inmates, as well as better training for legal aid attorneys, was also stressed. Additionally, NALSA's Early Access to Justice initiative, which has provided pretrial legal assistance to nearly 18,000 suspects, was recognized as a vital step in protecting rights before formal charges. The courts concluded by calling for continuous improvement in the legal aid system, emphasizing that without awareness, even the best legal frameworks cannot achieve their full potential. This is a clarion call, and this is what the Supreme Court is saying, talking about people having access to legal aid. And in as much as you're poor, does not mean you should have poor legal aid. It means that both people that are wealthy, that have access to justice, should also be applicable to those who are poor. And NALSA has also, according to the news, has also done well by creating clinics, providing clinics in the prisons, and also making sure that people are enlightened about their own rights, because there are a lot of people that don't even know their rights as humans. So there are people that need to understand that in as much as you are in prison, you also have rights, and of course, you have access to justice as well.
Indeed, the legal aid clinics are really important
Yeah.
to help people in that aspect. And also, I like how the Supreme Court, talks across the board to the entire judicial system. And in some cases, like we have in Nigeria, the Supreme Court is seen as the court of policy, to show you that it's not just about technicalities;
Yeah.
it's also about doing things that make the society better in one form or another. So it's interesting to see how well they can, do to implement some of those changes that the Supreme Court has made. Well, that's what we take for now for this segment. To go on a break. When we return, we'll bring you our last news item before we delve into other issues. Stay with us. We'll be right back. And now to our news item for the final one. An independent review has found that Australia's legal service funding is insufficient to meet the needs of marginalized groups. Conducted by Dr. Warren Mundy, the review focused on the National Legal Assistance Partnership or NLAP, which funds legal aid commissions and community legal centers. Dr. Mondi submitted his findings to the federal government in March, and the review was released recently. It includes 39 recommendations addressing funding shortages and staffing issues that affect service delivery in the judiciary. The NLAP was set to expire at the end of June. Dr. Mondi noted that previous recommendations had seen little implementation. He stressed that reviews must lead to real change. He pointed out that rising demand for legal services is linked to growing economic disadvantages and recent criminal law reforms. Many areas in Australia lack legal assistance for vulnerable populations. Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples face the highest unmet legal needs in the community, highlighting the broader socioeconomic factors influencing the rising demand for legal services. Dr. Mondi noted the increasing economic disadvantage of marginalized groups and recent reforms in criminal law regarding bail sentencing and family violence. He pointed out that many areas in Australia lack adequate legal assistance services for disadvantaged and vulnerable populations, with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people facing the highest levels of unmet legal needs among all groups in the community. Well, that's the report there, trying once again to get another country on its toes, this time Australia. And it will be interesting to see how these challenges are met, because I think the report does a lot to highlight what the issues could be if this funding is not addressed. And again, we should also, what we always say here on the program, about how some of the issues we are trying to fix or tackle often have to do with a lack of funding in the right places. So it will be interesting to see how countries are able to, find creative ways to help themselves, because we can't always depend on foreign aid. And we're talking about Australia here. It's not like it's a developing country that is going to get help from developed nations. So I think that's the key point here in addressing these needs. It's about budgeting and how they should rearrange their priorities. But whatever the case, the important thing to take note of here is that access to justice is a key part of society, and it should not be neglected. It should be given the funding it needs and deserves, so that everyone can have, dignity to life and proper access to justice.
Yes, I like that word you mentioned, budgeting, because imagine when you've already drafted out what you want to use money for, and the most important things you're supposed to include for it's not there, or you just assigned a little amount of money for it. At the end of the day, you don't get quality results from it, because when there is no funding attached to this access to justice and legal aid, people don't get to have access to justice actually. So the Australian government should see it as a priority to channel resources. Maybe if it's for staffing, making sure that the legal practitioners they are looking good, they are well, they have everything they need to carry out all these processes, because it's a legal aid, and this is coming from the support of the government to the underprivileged or to the less privileged, right? So the Australian government should see it as a priority to make sure that the legal aid and the whole access to justice journey doesn't suffer.
Indeed. Great words there. Well, that's how we end the segment for our news items. We'll go on a break. When we return, we'll be joined by a guest to do justice to the issue. We'll be starting with Kinichuku Agu. He is the Senior Programs Manager at PPDC. We'll be doing justice to the topic at hand. Stay with us. We'll be back shortly. Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hude Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hude Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hude Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people, and let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah 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 convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in, and let's drive straight into the heart of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is still Hude Hour on Hude Network. We've been talking on the issue of access to justice. Right now, I've been joined in the studio by a lawyer, a legal practitioner. He's also the senior programs manager at PPDC, talking about Kenichukwu Agu. Welcome to the program.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much.
It's good to have you.
Thank you. My pleasure.
All right. So we've been having the conversation and the discussion. So just to kick it off, what would you say in the first place are barriers to access to justice globally?
All right. So essentially, anything that restricts access to justice, it's a barrier. But globally, there are certain factors that have become prominent, across different nations. Of course, Nigeria not being an exception, and that includes cost of legal services, the high cost of accessing legal services, accessibility to the courts. How close are the courts to the people? What is the ease of access to the people? You also now talk about issues around corruption, because corruption deals a great blow to to issues of access to justice. If I perceive that the system is corrupt or that the system will be biased against me, I wouldn't be predisposed to going into the system in the first place, and that creates a barrier. And that barrier is unique because it doesn't care whether you're rich or poor. That can constitute a barrier for both the rich and the poor. Then we also look at availability of legal practitioners, availability of people who can represent themselves, who can represent others before the courts. Agreed that most of the national laws and, of course, international law principles allow you to represent yourself. That's the basic principle of fair hearing. And like one justice of the Supreme Court will put it, that God gave us 2 ears so we can hear from both sides. So the judge is expected to give you fair hearing. However, even though you are allowed to represent yourself, to what extent will be the efficacy of your representation when you are not well trained as an advocate to do that process? So what is the number of lawyers? What is the position of legal representation? Then we also look at availability of legal aid, and legal aid in terms of government-funded legal representation for people who cannot afford it. Even where it is present, where the government provides that service, we also now look at, okay, what is the yardstick for getting in? Some laws, might provide a barrier to getting in and place a cap to the barest minimum. Even so, for instance, the Nigerian Legal Aid Act provides that you are entitled to legal aid if your annual income is not more than the national minimum wage. As of today, the national minimum wage is about 70,000. So it means if everything I earn in a year is above 70,000, I'm not entitled to legal aid. However, I must give it to the Legal Aid Council of Nigeria that they've gone out of their way, gone out of that law to, provide legal aid for people, even though they earn more than that. But that is what the law says, and that can create a barrier to accessing even legal aid, which is meant to be for the poor. And there's also the issues of trust. When we don't trust the system, it's very difficult to access justice. If I don't trust the system, why should I trust that a lawyer provided by the government has my interest at heart? So these are some of the issues. Then we also look at literacy, legal literacy, even literacy generally, because so many persons don't even know what their rights are. So they will not even know when it is infringed upon. So you can now see how that affects access to justice as well.
Right. Before we move on to the next question, I just want to take it back to
Yes.
the legal aid issue
Yes.
and the requirements for it.
Yep.
Is there a difference or a line between, I think, for instance, we hear a lot when in America they read the Miranda rights and they say, if you cannot afford an attorney, one will be provided for you. It says if you cannot afford, it doesn't really say if your income level is so. So I'm wondering, does legal aid mean something else different from when simply a person says, I don't have the money for it. I might have the money for food, I might have the money for other things, but at this point in time, I don't have the money for a lawyer. Is that where legal aid comes in, or is there, a basic right that everyone has? Perhaps even say a billionaire is arrested and he says, I don't have the funds, although it sounds a bit ridiculous. But I just want to know, is there a baseline for somebody to simply say, I don't have the money, forget whatever is in my bank account, I don't have the money. Is that different from legal aid, or is it all together?
So legal aid is government provided legal services for the indigent, for the poor, right? And then we have situations where you are in court and you cannot afford a lawyer or you don't have a legal representation. In that instance, the law allows you to represent yourself.
Okay, so the law doesn't automatically provide you a lawyer?
No, it's where you said, oh, I want a lawyer, but I can't afford one.
Okay.
In that instance, the judge is also expected to carry out like a mini means test. The means test is the test that shows your capacity. And once it's satisfied that you cannot afford the services of a legal practitioner, they will usually ask a lawyer in court if there's anybody in court who is willing to take up your matter pro bono, who is willing to take up your case pro bono, right? Then that person takes up your case. At that instance, the Legal Aid Act in Nigeria, again, for example, now provides that that person is mandated to go to the Legal Aid Council to register that case he has taken up. So because the Legal Aid Council is supposed to monitor and supervise your provision of free legal services, so that people don't just take up people's cases and abandon them. I mean, that is what ought to be done. Emphasis on what ought to be done. Now, if you don't have a legal representation and is a capital offense, the court is bound to provide you legal representation because there is a law against self-incrimination. Because allowing you to defend yourself in a capital offense might lead to self-incrimination. Unless, of course, if you insist and opt to represent yourself. Otherwise, the laws, the judges will protect you from self-incrimination because it's a capital offense and the ultimate punishment is death. Yeah. So in that instance, the court is bound to, even in some instances where you say you are not guilty, the court is, that you are guilty rather, the court is bound to record not guilty for you and go on with trial if it's a capital offense.
Yeah, so in in India, the Supreme Court has actually made a statement and trying to revamp the justice, the legal system, saying that legal aid to the poor should not be poor legal aid. And you said something concerning registering those cases with the legal aid practitioners and making sure that it is carried out, it is not dumped somewhere. So, can you tell us what are these solutions? How can people, the poor in quotes, get legal aid and without their cases not being dumped?
First and foremost, every legal practitioner has a rule that guides his conduct. That's usually called the rules of professional conduct, depending on which country they are practicing, right? So, in addition to the law, there are rules that govern your conduct as a legal practitioner. And one of the provisions globally of such rules is that you do not take on people's cases and dump it because they are not able to pay you. From beginning, you negotiate. If the client is not able to pay your fees, you leave him. He moves to another lawyer. There is nothing compelling you to take up that case. But once you've taken up that case, you must see it to a conclusive end. And if for any reason you want to drop out of that case, you must notify the client, whether he's paying you or not. You must notify him in good time for him to be able to secure another legal representation. And you must also write to the court to notify the court. So the issues of, treating legal aid cases as if because they are poor people, you want to treat them the way you like, it's not the practice. And can even in legal practitioners' disciplinary measures. It can lead to your being reported to the various bodies responsible for discipline. Because every case you take on must be prosecuted with due diligence. That's the duty you owe to the court, that's the duty you owe to the client, and that's the duty you owe to the legal profession. So that duty is placed on you, that when you take up cases, you don't just deal with them because there are poor people. Those cases must be treated, every human being, the right to human dignity is so sacrosanct. It is the only right that doesn't have an exception. I mean, right to life, if you take another person's life, yours can be taken. Right to property has some limitations. When the government decides that your property, they are in need of it for a public good, they will take it away. Every other right has a derogation, has an exception to it. But the right to human dignity, even at that, it goes with you. So you cannot treat people less than human because they are poor. But the challenges remain that, look, a lot of poor people are not even aware that they can access these legal services. And this is a great hindrance to access to justice.
Okay, so before we go further on that, can you share some successful examples, perhaps across the globe, of judicial reforms? Because you mentioned the issue of trust, and that have led to increase in trust and then subsequently increase in access to justice.
I mean, you can look at examples around the world, like Finland, like Singapore. We try to say, okay, there are nobody in their prisons. Well, they have their own system that are working.
Say what?
That there are nobody in their prisons. They don't, in fact, there's even the saying that they bring people from other countries to come and stay in the prisons because those prisons are empty, right? But the issue is that there are a lot of jurisdictions, countries, have their own peculiar problems. For instance, and I say this boldly, one of the reasons why we have a high rate of pre-trial detention problem in Nigeria is also because of our classification. How do we classify? What's the distinction between a jail and a prison?
It's correctional centers, I believe.
We all lump them in one place here in Nigeria. In some other climes, there's that distinction. So when you ask them for rate of pretrial detainees, they are not reporting people who are in prison. They are reporting people who are in jail. They're reporting people, there's a place they wait before their trial concludes. And then we'll talk about pretrial detention. We're also dealing with, people, some of them, their trials have commenced. But because it hasn't been concluded, they are still classified as pretrial detainees. In Nigeria, before now, our classification was awaiting trial and convict. So it's either you are a convicted person or you're awaiting trial, but they are all kept in the same place. So looking at jurisdictions, I think India has also done a lot of improvement with their legal aid system. Also, the use of technology has also done some work, some good thing in India. You know, one thing about India is that their population gave them initially a very huge challenge, and they took it up and they saw those changes. Malawi also has something that they have done with paralegals. In Malawi, they have used paralegals to reduce their pre-trial detention population. You really don't need to be a lawyer to carry out these activities. Once you have a little understanding, once you have a little basic knowledge of these things, then they help you to move forward.
All right, fair enough.
All right. I know we've asked this before, but let's try to bring it now to Africa, the Pan Africa, West Africa. What are those steps that Africa as a continent can do, or what are those things that you as an individual and what you stand for, what you represent, is doing to make sure that this issue of access to justice is being solved?
All right. First is, again, I would like us to take an African approach to it. And this African approach to it is, look, let's own the fact that there is a problem. And let's accept that we are a huge part of that problem, right? And ways to deal with this would include, one, let us have appointment of judicial officers in an unbiased process. That would help build trust. I don't need to be the wife or the husband of a chief judge to know that if I apply to be a judge, I'll be taken. We can also copy from African countries. Some African countries have developed a means where you want to be a judge, your CV is put out there to the public. Everybody sees it, and people who have any complaints against your appointment as a judge will come up. And when they come up, it's being treated. If there are no complaints, then the person is appointed. That means that person understands that this trust is given to him by the entire society. And is not answerable to one governor somewhere. It's not answerable to a politician. It's not answerable to a minister somewhere. It's answerable to the people. So if, as Africans, we go back to... No, if we look at the origin of judiciary, it starts from God. God sits as a judge. So judges on earth sit in the place of God on earth. And which means they should live above board. So their appointment, remuneration of judges, discipline for judges, even their tenure, they should have a secured tenure. If there is a secure tenure for judicial officers, and I know that once I finish my tenure or once I retire, if, for instance, it's a lifetime tenure like we have in Nigeria, then we know that when I retire, I'm not going back to being a poor man. So that makes me keep my house in order. That makes me do things in the right way. But if I'm scared that I have 5 more years to retire and I don't have a home to call my own, and one real estate company has a matter before me, and they give me like 3 plots in one place and promise to build one, you can imagine what that would do. And I keep hammering on corruption and trust because it erodes the system and the poor will no longer have access to it. One of the things I keep shouting about is that as Africans, we should not penalize poverty. We should not criminalize poverty. Let it not be a crime to be poor. Let it not be a crime to be poor. And I mean, what we have done so far, but we're starting up on November 19th, we are part of an alliance, an African alliance, that we are inaugurating the Center for African-Centered Justice, which is going to take place in Dakar, Senegal. And PPDC is happy to be a part of that alliance. We are beginning to look at issues of justice, issues of access to justice within Africa, issues of what we can do, as organizations, as non-state actors, to come together to improve this access to justice. But for us at PPDC, one of the things we have done so far is that we are strengthening systems to make sure that there is reduced human input. And that has led us to, digitizing some courts.
You've caused into my next question, which
Oh,
is
oh,
the
okay.
impact of technology in addressing these issues.
Oh, it's so huge. It's so huge. Technology reduces human efforts, and human input, when it's reduced, you can begin to curb corruption. If I don't need to see someone to file my matter, then nobody's going to ask me to pay a bribe to file. If I don't even need to be in court physically, there are lesser chances that the judge will ask me to bring some money.
When you say being caught physically, are you talking about as a defendant?
Yes.
You want to be away from court?
The world have moved. People do courts virtually. And I'm happy to tell you that in Nasarawa, Plateau, and Kaduna, now we are moving into FCT, Oyo, and Ebonyi states. We are doing virtual courts. Our systems has the facility to connect, although now we are starting with criminal matters. But any judge who wants to also use it for civil matters can go ahead to use it.
People are getting actual justice.
Our courts, people are now in prison and the court is going on. They don't need to come. It's a virtual system.
If I understand you, well, you're not talking about, when you say it's criminal, you mean these persons are in detention?
They are in prison. They are in the custodial center. Sorry, we have baptized, we have done baptism and changed their name.
And this has worked elsewhere in the world.
It works. It works. You don't need to be present in court. I mean, COVID even showed us. And COVID moved a lot of people to even know what Zoom was or what, other virtual meeting networks. So our systems we have provided virtual courts in custodial centers linked to our pilot courts. So the judges, the detainees no longer need to come physically. All they need to do is move from their cells to the online court, virtual court facility in the same prison, and
again,
their matter goes on.
Again, in the interest of access to justice, are these detainees expected to pay any sums?
They are not paying anything. They are not paying anything. Of course, these systems we are provided now is funded by the US government. But we have gotten the states to commit to put in budgetary allocation for at least internet to make sure that these things go on, And good thing, we are happy to the state governors that have already assured us that they are doing this already. And they've even started, like Nasarawa State. So the system is at no cost to the detainee. The same way the government would have spent money looking for vehicles to bring them to the court. Imagine the security risk that happens when they are carrying a high-profile person. And how many vehicles does the custodial centers have to move detainees across all the courts? So this technology we are deploying has come to help. And for instance, there are cases that are ongoing in Maiduguri and Kainji, terrorism cases, people that have been arrested for being part of insurgent groups. They are in Kainji in Niger State and Maiduguri in Borno State. But the judges trying these cases are in the Federal High Court here in Abuja. So each time they need to try them, they have to be airlifted to those places. Now, the second phase of our project that we are doing now, thanks to the US government, will support our deployment of our virtual courts to those centers and the Federal High Court here in Abuja. Right. So that trial can go on, and it reduces the length of time people stay, which is also an access to justice question. If it takes me 10 years to do something that would have naturally taken me a year or so, and I mean, the Chief Judge of Plateau State told us that before our project, it took 4 months to compile record of proceedings. That someone whose case has been tried and wants to go on appeal, he needs 4 months to compile that process. But with our systems now, it takes just 4 minutes. Right. So you can see the impact of technology. 4 months and 4 minutes. You can't. There's no way to compare them.
Indeed, that is progress. Thank you so much for coming. We've run out of time now. Wish we could talk more. Hopefully, we get to see another part of this. Maybe when we get to the other aspect of this matter. But thank you so much for coming. And
thank you very much.
Contribution.
I'm very grateful. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you. All right, so that's how we end this segment of the program. We'll take a quick break and we return. We'll delve further, or more specifically, into the aspect of the African context of this, so that we get to break it down further. Stay with us. We'll be right back. I will be joined by Nazir. He's the president of the West African Students Law Association. Stay with us. Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hude Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hude Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hude Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people, and let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah 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 convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in and let's drive straight into the heart of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is still Hude Hour on Hude Network. We've been talking about access to justice. Right now, we've been joined by another guest, the International President of the West Africa Law Students Association, to delve further into the aspect of the West African situation when it comes to access to justice. Welcome to the program. It's good to have you.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go straight into it. From your understanding and your knowledge across the West African space, what would you say is the progress of things as regards access to justice in this moment?
Thank you for asking me this important question. Let me begin by saying that access to justice is what keeps society alive. And access to justice is a natural right of human beings. And it is a fundamental human right which is embedded in the international instruments, such as African Charter on Human and People Rights and International Covenant on Civil Political Rights, including Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and also various national constitutions within the sub-Saharan Africa. For instance, Chapter 3 of the Sri Lankan Constitution encapsulates that. Chapter 4 of the Gambian Constitution, Article 5 of the Ghana Constitution, Article 11 of the Liberian Constitution, and also Article 6, 7, 8, 9, 11, and 12 of the Senegal Constitution. All these provisions talk about the right to access to justice. But the valid question that shall we ask is justice accessible in West Africa? The answer is no. The truth of the matter is that most citizens within West Africa are unable to access justice. because of the nature of the system, institutional lapses. Some of the reasons for that is we have a complex legal system, which most people, they don't understand, they don't know how to go about it. And secondly, we have deficits in our digital and physical infrastructure. Most of our court, especially in rural areas, you will see that most of the court is understaffed. So these are some of the problems. And apart from that, we have issue of corruption, systematic and endemic corruption within judiciary. So all these things must be addressed for people to have an access to justice within West Africa. And apart from that, we have various institutions funded by government and non-state actors. For instance, in the Gambia, we have National Legal Aid Agency. In Sierra Leone, we have Legal Aid Board. In Senegal, we have also Legal Aid Agency. And in Nigeria, we have Legal Aid Council also. But all these institutions are not doing the needful. They are not funded properly. They have limited resources. Mostly, for instance, in Sierra Leone, it's only someone that committed a capital offense or juvenile children that will have that the council can even provide a support. We have a lot of legal issues, even beyond the criminal aspect. And apart from that, we need to have specialized courts in West Africa so that people will be able to have access to justice. For instance, in Europe and in the US, they have a lot of specialized courts. For instance, they have even small claims court. But in West Africa, you see that High Court alone entertain all manners of cases. It entertain criminal cases, civil cases, commercial, all manners of cases. So by and large, we need to have to sit and redefine what is even access to justice in West Africa, and what we should have an indigenous legal system. Our legal system in West Africa is influenced by Western legal system. We don't even know what is okay for us. So that is it.
Okay, fair enough. Can you kindly tell us what are those solutions that needs to be done based on the issues of access to justice in West Africa?
Thank you for asking these valid questions. So some of the plausible recommendations. Number one, we have to strengthen our institutions. As I said, we have deficits in our digital infrastructure. Some courts in the rural areas within West Africa, they still use pen and paper to record the statement of litigants. So we need to invest massively in our digital infrastructure. Apart from that, let me tell you something. In most rural areas in West Africa, some courts, they don't have even a physical room. Some, they even sit under trees to conduct a proceeding. Or primary schools, they use primary school rooms to conduct a proceeding. I witnessed a magistrate court even here in Nigeria, where the magistrate court does not even have a roof. The magistrate court, if it is during rainy season, meaning that they cannot have a proceeding, or they have to go and look for other place. So how will you assess justice in such kind of place? So we need to invest massively in digital and physical infrastructure. And number two, we must address the issue of corruption. An issue of corruption can be addressed drastically by using technology. The best tool for anyone to fight corruption is technology. As my learned mentor, Barrister Kenechukwu, highlighted that with technology, there are a lot of people you don't need even to come in contact with them. For instance, now, e-filing. You can file your case before any court. E-filing, you don't need to go to the court and meet the registrar so that the registrar may ask you that, I know the judge. Maybe you should bring 20,000. I will talk to the judge. He will favor you. So e-filing. And even sometimes, the proceeding can take place virtually. So after addressing issue of corruption, we must have an indigenous legal system. We are still using our legal system is 80% influenced by Europe and US legal system. So we need to have an indigenous legal system. We have let me tell you something. Even our customary laws is unwritten. It's not properly documented. So we need to, our various national assembly should document our customary laws. And those that are against, the customary laws that are repugnant to natural justice, equity, and good conscience, the legislature should create a better one. And apart from that, we should strengthen the areas that practice Sharia laws. They should be allowed to practice Sharia law. Where they practice customary law or any religion law, they should be allowed, instead of having a laws that is not peculiar to our environment, that is not peculiar to our society. So after we have an indigenous law, lawyers must do a lot of works. There is one popular saying that lawyers and judges always saying that ignorance of the law is not an excuse. But that one is not valid if we want our people to have an access to justice. We must create legal awareness within our various community. Our legal system is very complex. Even lawyers sometimes find it difficult to know what is the correct position of the law. What about ordinary man? So we need to create a legal awareness. Let people know their rights. So that, and some people, they don't know that this is even their right. So we need to create a legal awareness. And after that, pro bono services. Lawyers, I think in Nigeria that before you can attend the prestigious rank of the senior advocate of Nigeria, you must do certain number of pro bono cases. So it is my humble suggestion that it should not be like that. Every lawyer, every practicing lawyer, for instance, last year, there is about 70,000 lawyers that pay their annual practicing dues, meaning that only 70,000 lawyers are entitled to practicing in Nigeria. So at least every single lawyer, every single practicing lawyer should do a pro bono case, not less than a single pro bono case each year. That will at least ensure that people will have access to justice.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Nazir. You've spoken so well, and your solutions are so memorable that I believe anyone who's watching can take at least one or two to, better our legal system. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, that's how we end this segment of the program. I will go on a break now. When we return, we'll delve into verified voices. You've been watching Hude. Stay with us. We'll be right back. Every day, amazing stories of hope and tenacity unfold across the globe. On Hude Hour, we dive into these inspiring tales and discuss the vital work being done in the humanitarian and development space. Humanity has never faced a shortage of challenges, yet we rise stronger through teamwork and determination. Though these remedies are often underreported, on Hude Hour, we advocate sustainable solutions. We bring you the latest and most impactful news on how lives are being changed. We engage with young change makers and experts who provide valuable insights into relief efforts and the challenges faced by local communities through a global perspective. Join us every Wednesday by 8 a.m. on Hude Network's YouTube channel as we embark on this journey of positive change.
Hey everyone, let's face it, our world today experiences numerous challenges. And guess what? Our community isn't off the hook either. Most of the world issues are either not talked about enough or never talked about at all. But here on Timeline, we've got you covered. We dive deep into issues that affect us every day, leaving behind footprints of wisdom, knowledge, and solutions. Think of it like a roadmap that keeps you on the track for success. So buckle up, because in this new season of Timeline, we're taking another trip through the past, the present, and navigate into a more promising future. Again, we're talking solutions, people. And let's make one thing clear. This is not your average blah, blah, blah convo. This is real talk with a side of inspiration and a sprinkle of wow. I never thought about it like that. I'm your host on this impactful ride. Together, we'll tackle the tough stuff, laugh a little, and find ourselves on the path to positive change. So what are you waiting for? Season 2 of Timeline will be loaded. Let's get started. Hop in, and let's drive straight into the hearts of issues shaping our world. Let's go. Oh, one more thing. Hit that subscribe button and let's take this ride together.
Welcome back. This is still Hude Hour. We're now diving into the Verified Voices segment where we take a look at what the major stakeholders have to say regarding the issue at hand, which is today access to justice. So let's take a look now at our first item of the day. We have from the UN Human Rights, access to justice protects people and our planet. Realizing human rights now and in the future means taking ambitious climate action now. We thank young people and climate activists who are showing the way forward in the countries there. We have Australia and others and beyond. You can learn more over there. Well, this is the intersection of access to justice and climate action. And the UN Human Rights is basically saying that young people are doing well. And I would just hope that, like the image says, that we hope others take a cue from the lead that young people are taking, which is what we're all about here. Young people taking the lead.
Yes, it's very, very important for people to understand that fundamental human rights is very, very paramount. And protecting the human rights is just like you're also protecting the planet. So it is very important for people to know that making people have access to justice is very, very key. All right, let's move quickly to the next news item. Yes, this is from Germany in the United Nations. Says, hashtag WPS Week. Without accountability, there can no be sustainable peace. Every survivor of CRSV, that is the conflict-related sexual violence, must be granted access to justice. The Al-Khatib trial in Germany was the first trial for crimes of conflict-related sexual violence, hashtag in Syria and in detention. Okay, so we're still saying the same thing, that without accountability, there is no sustainable peace. And people need to understand that this whole sexual violence is a very, very serious issue that needs to be tackled. So the earlier, the better people get access to justice.
Indeed, and victims of conflict-related sexual violence are, often forgotten because there's a conflict in the first place, and then there's violence, and people feel like anything can happen.
Yeah.
So for Syria, I think it's a major milestone. That's the first case in Syria where we have issues with conflicts and peace, and all of that. So I think we need more of that, and we notice is Germany, promoting that, particularly with the particular trial in question.
Yeah.
So we hope to see more of that, and hopefully those persons who are crying out, seeking for justice but have no access to it,
Yeah.
begin to get access to it. Let's take a look at our final verified voice now. We have from the UN Democracy Fund, the second Global Progress Report on SDG 16 sheds a light on the urgent need to scale up action for peace, justice, and strong institutions. Well, has been the whole summary of what we've been talking about, and the relationship between these three. If there's no justice, there's no peace. To get justice, you need strong institutions.
Yes.
They're all interlinked. And
Of course.
that report, and I believe the link is right there, and you can check it out to get the state of things and where we need to be as regards access to justice. I believe our guests have done some justice interesting into that, and hopefully, we're able to see more of that, and we follow that report and the recommendations.
Yes, and I look forward to people having more access to justice, both the poor getting legal aid, strong institutions will build up and make sure that, of course, the SDG 16 by 2030 will be at the front line.
Hopefully. And indeed, like they say, we hope that people focus more on strong institutions and not strong individuals.
Of course.
Nobody really cares about
Cares
that
about
right now. So that's how we end the program for today. It's been a good one. Hude hour here. We've been talking about access to justice. I hope you learned one or two things, and I hope it helps you in your journey of advocacy to ensure that even the least privileged in our society gets access to justice, so that the rest of us as a society can beat our chest and say that we have a justifiable, justiciable system that suits all and is ensuring the human rights are enabled for everyone and human dignity. That's how we end the program today. Do join us once again while we delve into more matters on the humanitarian and development space. Have a nice day. I'm Amadine Ubel.
And I am Joan Eze. Thank you for joining us.